It's a question for all panel now, and we're talking about churn and lapse. So it's a question from Timothy Van Dor. He wants a simple yes-no question for all panel members, and in asking the question it brings up lots of other issues as well. But Timothy's question is, should we define the difference between a lapse and a churn? Again, it's a simple question, but there's a lot behind the answer. So who hasn't spoken yet? Can we, perhaps one of our live company colleagues, perhaps, you've got the mic, Mark, let's go with you and see where it takes us.
So what the question was?
Should we define the difference between a lapse and a churn? I guess we need to appreciate what motivated the question in the first place, but let's see how you go and we'll just have a conversation.
So I think the answer is yes, we should define the difference between a lapse and a churn. The challenge is, what do we do with that information? Because, you know, in our environment, and certainly in my organisation, we ask questions of clients that choose to cancel their policies. We don't actually ask them questions when they lapse because they just leave. So the challenge is that we need to be asking people on the way in the rationale for them moving their business. But when we ask customers that are cancelling their policies, the challenge is that the response can be gamed. I know that 18% of our cancellations are because an advisor has asked for them to move that policy. So there's a whole range of reasons for, and quite rightly so, for good reasons. So when I refer to business moving, I refer to it as being replacement business. I don't necessarily refer to it as churn. My view around churn is that we actually generate reports on a monthly basis, and we identify individuals that, you know, in isolation may be moving business for very, very good reasons. But when they're moving 30 cases a month for very, very good reasons, that's a real challenge. So every individual case is explainable. However, we will have a conversation with an advisor, and maybe there's someone in this room that we've had that conversation with, and ask them why they're systematically moving the business. And the response can sometimes be, because I don't like you anymore and I'm churning all of my business out of you. And that is the reality of the situation. So, and that is what actually brings our industry down in some instances, whereas there are other advisors that say, look, best interest for my client, I need to move it, there's an affordability challenge and it's going to X, Y, Z. We don't have an issue with that when we capture that information. So, long answer to a short question, the answer is we should better understand it, but we need to take steps in terms of identifying who we believe are the systematic churners. I know that there's been a call for the life officers to collaborate around, you know, this industry list. Again, to Damien's point before, it's challenging to kind of collaborate or collude in those types of circumstances, but we address them individually, and I know that advisors that will read or see or listen to this will know who they are.
Look, I don't probably have a huge amount to add to what Mark's already said. All I'll say is it's quite difficult to define the difference between a churn and a lapse. I know everyone might go, well, no, it's very simple. But the reality is, when we go out and speak to the advisors, there's always reasons behind most cases. Just want to touch briefly on the 3-year responsibility period. I think it's great to see that no one's hands went up when you asked that question, Peter, about people leaving. The reality is, retention is going to become something that we all need to get a lot better at, and I think part of these changes are going to be life insurance companies are going to really start working with you much better than we ever have done about how we retain clients long term. At the moment, most of us have retention teams, but all we do is we just collect premium. The reality is we need to do a lot more working with you in how we retain that and how we interact with customers in regards to our renewal notices, etc., etc. Okay,
David, I'll let you go. If you can hand the mic to Wayne. Wayne, what's the difference between a churn and a lapse? And let's extrapolate a little bit about what might have motivated the question. I think the question, to an extent, relates to fairness, particularly when we're talking about clawbacks. We're getting, I think, back to the clawback question again. So the question to you is what's fair and what's not in terms of clawbacks? And the second question is, do you support the blacklisting of serial churners?
The life officers know, I think, because they're in charge of data, and also licensees would know if there are serial churners. But you know, churning is an internal word, and I think this argument is a broader argument about definition. And I'll ask the audience, what's the definition of a lapse?
Anything that stops.
So if I ask the three companies beside me what their definition is a lapse, like I asked Sally Lone, who's the CEO of the Financial Services Council, if she knew what the definition of a lapse was, and she couldn't answer me. Because the issue goes broader. You couldn't articulate straight away. We can't articulate it straight away. How on earth does the consumer group articulate it straight away? So it's a case of understanding, because it seems like a mystic cloud of artful deception that we don't understand. And we haven't been provided with any statistics of churn. We haven't been provided with any statistics. And we have companies who go out and turn books. Is that a churn? Is that a churn? So it's okay if it's coming to me, but it's not okay if it's leaving me.